Welcome to CNET's 2019 general election coverage. I'm Ann Danahy, and today we're talking with candidates in the race for Centre County Sheriff. Joining us now is a write-in candidate, Hobson McKown. Hobson, thank you for coming in to talk with us.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's a very exciting experience.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for sheriff?
I am a Pennsylvania born and raised believer in rules and following them. And from childhood, I spent a lot of time, even at school and so on, dealing with rules and policies and asking if they're there, making sure they're enforced. And this has gone through adulthood. So in Centre County, when I moved here in 2006, I began a quest to try to be a good citizen and look into governance in Centre County and other counties in Pennsylvania and try to help by informing our officers and employees what I find, with the hope that they will find out something that perhaps they didn't know and then find out what they need to do to address it.
And what do you do now?
I'm a civic activist. That is what I do. I put a lot of time in not only interfacing with officials, but litigation and preparing for my own cases and sometimes information for other cases and so on. So I've been litigating in Centre County, not always by choice, but sometimes, since 2008. I, in fact, just sued Centre County this year under the Sunshine Act.
Okay, why?
Because they have meetings that are held at the county building, at which one must submit to a search before entering. And to run a checkpoint, which blocks a meeting.
The metal detector when you
walk
into
metal detector,
the county office building?
It means that sheriffs can pick and choose who comes in. And I've been expelled from buildings at the county by sheriffs unlawfully. So if they can expel someone, I don't think it's a public meeting. And we in fact just had a ruling that dismissed my case, but in doing so said that I needed to say that there was no ordinance that allowed them to have that checkpoint. And we in fact have not had one until February 12, 2019.
So is that part of why you decided to run for sheriff as opposed to one of the other row offices or elective offices in Centre County?
Well, my choice to run for sheriff is based in the belief that liberty is a safe space to choose between right and wrong. And I don't like rule breakers, and sometimes public officers and employees are some of the biggest offenders. I don't want sheriffs entering homes without warrants to burgle our property. I don't want sheriffs expelling persons from the courthouse and county buildings during normal business hours. And I don't want our police to come to an entryway concealing their identity only to go on to shoot a man in his castle. I don't want those things. And as the sheriff is, as a chief law enforcement officer in some of the cases, in a position to try to educate and prevent the wrongdoings that may go on in our county.
Have you proven that this is happening? The concerns that you just raised as the reasons that you're running for sheriff?
The basis for those are my own personal experience, in which I have court rulings talking about unlawful entry by sheriffs and unauthorized taking of property. I've gone through a court case involving supposed disorderly conduct and trespass at the courthouse during normal business hours in order to litigate the question about who has the authority, who owns the courthouse and who has the authority to say you can't be there during normal business hours. And I believe from the press release of the State College Police, the description of what happened in the Osagie incident spoke of a concealment by police officers at the entryway of a home, only to shoot a man inside his castle.
Right, we just note that there were no charges filed in that case after an investigation into it. But why did you decide to run as a write-in candidate?
I initially sought to challenge Brian Samsel on the Republican ballot.
The current sheriff.
Right, while at the same time seeking a Democratic write-in nomination so that I have that position on the ticket. But ultimately, There is no one else running for sheriff. Our current sheriff is the only other person that I know of announced for this office. And I don't think anyone should run unopposed. I mean, that seems offensive to democracy. But I mean, usually sometimes other police officers from other precincts or deputies run for office. That's almost always the case. This year, it's a very strange year for elections. But because my experience is that the current sheriff was involved with those things I spoke about, the court saying there's an unlawful entry to a home, unauthorized taking of property, that's not what I want in Center County.
Okay, well, just note he's not here to defend himself, so we're talking about your opinion at this point. I want to talk about a few other topics as well. The opioid epidemic is a big issue in Center County and across the state and the country. And I wondered what your thoughts are about how, as a county official, if you were elected, what approach you would take to trying to deal with that.
The sheriff is there to enforce the law that we have in place. And when it comes to the so-called opioid epidemic, whatever it may be, there are organizations in society to deal with those issues, but it's not for the sheriff to use the resources of the county where he is not authorized to do so to quash something that is believed that needs to be taken care of. And so there are parties that should be involved in helping society move away from bad decisions, essentially through education, through practice of, ultimately it comes down to education.
And you've talked a little bit about this, but I wonder if you could elaborate on, if you were elected, what would your priorities be for the office?
One of my biggest priorities is to involve our citizens in law enforcement. They are, through our Constitution, through our common law, and through our statutory acts of our assembly, General Assembly, they have duties to help uphold the law just like our officials do. And unfortunately, there's an abdication of that involvement across a lot of our people, and they don't have the opportunity, the education to know how to participate. The system was never meant to work without their participation. So I intend to enable our citizens to be involved and to know how to be involved in upholding the law. One of the things that's important to me is to not have searches and seizures in this county that are not authorized by law. I don't want unreasonable ones. I don't want warrantless ones. There are ways to deal with law enforcement. We have tools, but we don't need to break the law to try to enforce the law.
If you were elected, you'd be in charge of the office too. Can you talk a little bit about your management style?
The sheriff is ultimately an administrator in a lot of cases, rather than being the person performing some of these acts. He acts by deputies in many cases. And it's going to take an evaluation of our current staff and to look at what needs to be done. But something that is not done across our offices in this county is putting out a standard or a ruler by which to measure the conduct of our officers. How can anyone know what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do? And how can our officers know that if we don't have regulations, rules, and statement of policies that address every situation that could come up? We know what the law is, and we should have it all in writing so that anyone should know ahead of time what's okay and what isn't, and then we can be held to it.
So aren't a lot of things though already in written law in Pennsylvania statutes? Court decisions,
it's up to the
policies and procedures?
It's up to the agency to promulgate much of it, and the fact is, no, we have a widespread issue with a lack of, at the municipal levels, these writings that tell us what they can and cannot do. For an example, I've spent years looking at multiple counties, including Center, to find how can they run a checkpoint at a point of entry for a courthouse? Show me that in writing. And my right to know requests and other requests returned nothing. there was nothing allowing them to do that, to stop us, to search us. And I think that's offensive to the Constitution, that is the will of the people. If we want these things, there are ways to achieve them, either through law under our Constitution or a constitutional convention to change it. But we must follow those rules. That is our best safety.
And you're running as a write-in candidate. This is a political position. It's an elective office. Do you see yourself as someone who can work across party lines with people on both sides of across the political spectrum?
The county code itself commands that I cooperate with both those in the county offices and in the judicial office, and it's my intent to work with as many people as possible with no regard to their political affiliation. The good governance involves a lot of communication and learning a lot and providing a lot of that information to the people themselves as much as possible, except for what the law prevents from release, so that they could be stakeholders as well in the process. And, you know, there's following the rules, or if they're broken, then the appropriate person needs to take action to remediate that or to arrest it, as the case may be.
And you mentioned the Osagi case, and this was a situation in State College where police went to serve a mental health warrant, and Osagi ended up being shot fatally by police officers. There were no charges filed in the situation. It's in civil court now, you might add. What approach would you bring, or what do you think needs to be done to address questions that have come up after that about police interactions with people with mental health issues, and also questions about police interactions with people of all races?
As to the point of race, that is, it's not really written in to deal with race in any particular way. We're all people and should be dealt with lawfully and respectfully. And the fact is that we've had law for hundreds of years where even a sheriff has to knock and announce when he goes to serve a warrant. So it doesn't matter what race a person is, to follow that, to uphold that, and make sure that every person gets the liberty that they deserve and is not stopped by unlawful acts, often felonies, by public officials. As a victim of burglary, but not of murder, the reason I try to do what I do is to make sure that those events don't happen, that someone doesn't get hurt. So I try to stop it at the source. And as for the, the issue of mental health, everyone needs to be trained on how to deal with people no matter what their mental state is, and to use the least reasonable necessary force in any situation to maintain safety for everyone.
Hobson, we have a few seconds left. Is there anything else you'd like to say to voters out there?
Yes, I am your next Center County Sheriff, Hobson McKown. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us. We've been talking with Hobson McKown, a write-in candidate for Center County Sheriff. All candidates on the ballot in Center County were invited to join us at CNET. I'm Ann Danahy. Thank you for watching, and please remember to vote in the election November 5th.